First of all, I'd like to thank Raquel for the invitation. I was a bit surprised at first because honestly, I don't find myself very interesting. But I was just very grateful for the invitation. Like written on, I think, the brief profile, my name is Adriana. I am 48 years old. I have no shame talking about my age. I was born in São Paulo. For some time, I grew up in Recife. Then my family moved to Brasilia, and from here we moved to Washington, where we stayed for about 15 years. So I went to elementary school, junior high, high school, and part of my university in Washington. So can we have the next slide, please, Raquel? Okay, so the previous one. So I told you about my age, where I was born and where I grew up. And I didn't live in too many cities, but I did live in some. However, the only thing that has remained absolutely stable in my life ever since I can recall myself as a person is my absolute love for horses. So that is my passion. That is how I see myself, a horse person, a horse freak, a horse crazy lady. And the story says, or the story goes, that my mother had a very hard time keeping me off a horse or a donkey, whether it was a real animal or just a rocking horse. So when I think of my identity, I think of horses first. And fortunately, I have been able to draw several parallels with that passion and my life. Okay, so that's where we're going from here. Can we have the next slide, please? So as with professions, as with relationships, as with tasks, as with translation, and as with interpretation, there is always a beginning, which is a place that is filled with dream, filled with awe, enthusiasm. And that has been no different for me as a human being, as a person, as a professional, and as a mother. So I'm sharing with you my three boys. And I'd like you to take a good look at their appearances on the slide, because that's definitely not what they look like today. And again, there's one thing that is in common between or amongst the three boys in this photograph, and that is the mare that is behind them, who I think she was my animal soulmate. Her name was Europa. Keep that in mind, because then at the very end, we're going to tie a whole big string to connect everything here. Okay, so beginnings. And every beginning brings with it discoveries. Can we please have the next slide? Okay, so you can ignore the horrible haircuts. The focus here is several moments of my life with several horses, all whom were beginnings and all who led me to discover. And with discovery comes change, and with change comes the need for you to have several characteristics or abilities that you will need to deal with these discoveries and consequently changes. The next one, please. With each new discovery comes the change that I mentioned, and change brings about new experiences, and new experiences bring forth different contexts. And again, I'm sure that each one of us here in this practice today has gone through several changes. They have gone through several beginnings. They have been faced with discoveries, both good and bad. And they have all been in different contexts of their lives. Different contexts professionally, different contexts with relationships, whether they were more romantic type or just a friend or just someone you really couldn't stand being next to. And context is extremely important everywhere, right? I mean, look at what we're doing now. You are suddenly parachuting into the life of a crazy horse person into a context that you likely wouldn't have selected on your own. So these are some of my contexts. Again, funny hairs. I didn't have as many wrinkles on the pictures to the left. But they're all contexts. They're writing the story. Okay. So can I have the next one, please? Do you remember the picture that I showed you a while back, sharing the same mare with my boys at different ages? Well, that little boy on the left is the not so little boy that's the tallest, sitting on the fence. To his right on the picture is my youngest. To his left is my middle child. And at the forefront is Europa, who again, my soul animal. And something that I find very important, considering the beginnings, considering my identity, the discoveries, and the context, is that through everything, I think one of the most important pieces or secrets for me is keeping my essence. So it is part of my essence to be in that context where I am one with the people around me. I am one with the animals around me. I am one with the whole environment or ambience around me. And I think that this essence leads us to internalize and to comprehend and to grasp the meaning of what we're doing. Whether that is sitting in the field with my son's husband and horses, or in a booth interpreting for some crazy event that is driving me up the wall and that I needed to study for hours and still don't know anything about, which will happen. So essence, I think, is a driving force for me. And I think it is something that needs to be with you constantly, 24/7, because it is through your essence and again, your background that you're going to be able to establish objectives for yourself and objectives for the meeting you're going to interpret. What are you there for? Who asked you to be there? What do they need you to do? Establishing objectives for your meeting, for your day, perhaps for that month. And I think that is something that apart from horses and my objectives with them, it has always been something difficult for me to do. And I see that it's not that atypical for people to be a little bit uncomfortable in establishing their objectives. But I think that if you respect your essence, you can draw new objectives for yourself that will echo your desires, they will echo your personality, they will echo your strengths and also your weaknesses. And once you have defined your objectives, once you're ready to take the next step, then I think things become a little bit more different. They're going to require you to get into the momentum of things. And then that momentum will be very exciting in the beginning, like your first translation job, interpretation job. You're going into some big event for your first time. So you have all of that adrenaline going, the excitement, the curiosity, the insecurities as well. And I think that for you to overcome all of that, the difficulties, and for you to get acquainted with the excitement of it, to put it into a perspective of that being empowering for you and not threatening for you, you will need to have a lot of dedication. Can I have the next slide, please, Raquel? I think we skipped one. There's one. Can you go forward one, please? There's one. Yes. Dedication. Just as a side note, horseback riding and horses and the whole equestrian world, I think transmits that notion to people that you're full of money, you're like a princess, or, you're royalty, like Queen Elizabeth loves horses. So, like you have to be royalty to do that. And yeah, that's true for some people. But I think when you really love what you're doing and you have objectives and you want this to be a process, a complete process with a beginning, with a development, with a middle, perhaps with an end, that requires dedication. And as with my love for the horses, there has always been a strong dedication toward them. In these particular cases, it's not that fancy, it's not that royal to be eating McDonald's for dinner, sitting in the stall with your horse while he's getting medical treatment, or having to spend the night in another stall taking care of a premature foal that is born. You can see my niece sleeping in the back because she's my partner in crime and in every other situation, but she's there. So dedication, I think, is another aspect that makes a huge difference in our personal lives as well as with our professional lives. So if we go a few steps back in terms of these aspects that I draw a parallel to and between my personal life and my passion for horses and my professional life, first, my identity, who I am. What am I doing in this particular situation? I know, like, who am I is an extremely difficult question to answer, and I don't think I've reached that point of enlightenment. However, who am I here? What am I doing now? What purpose am I serving? How can I begin? What needs to happen for me to get started? What discoveries will I find along the way? What is the context? So what is this way? What is the discovery, and what am I going to do along this way? How can I keep my essence and be true to myself during the process so that I can establish objectives? How much dedication do I need to have to keep that going? Can I have the next slide, please? I think it's the one with the interpreting pictures. Okay. So objectives. This is the only time that I'm moving from the horse world because I would like to draw a parallel here too. I mean, you can see polemic pictures here. You can see people that, attract others' attention. Of these my absolute favorite person to work with here is in the top right-hand corner, former Vice President Alencar, who was just a very inspiring person. And the parallel that I associate here is that regardless of what your objectives are, you need to consider your context. You need to consider what you're doing. But regardless of whether you're with an admiral, if you're with a UFC fighter, if you're with former US president, if you are with current or upcoming president, or with an ambassador, it doesn't matter. If you are true to yourself and to your objectives, you're going to treat everyone the same, whether you're interpreting for the UN or you're interpreting for perhaps the guy on the corner that needs to take the bus somewhere. It doesn't matter because your objectives are going to be well defined. Can I please have the next slide? The next one, please. Okay. And with objectives, given that we're going to face several different types of contexts and situation, I think we need to be true to the focus. So how do we maintain focus? What is focus? Because perhaps what is focus for you is not getting confused with everything I'm saying right now, whereas for your booth mate is maintaining like absolutely impeccable vocabulary. So what is going to be your focus here? Just as a side note, do you remember Europa in the first few pictures that I showed you? Can I see a nod or not? Okay, well, this is Valentina. This is her baby. This is her daughter. So I want to show you that there's continuity in everything. Okay, so this is Valentina. Can we have the next one, please? And what are you going to face next, right? You have your context, your objective, your dedication, but life's not easy all the time. There's challenge, there are hurdles to overcome. There are problems. There are problems with technical equipment. There are problems with persons. There are problems with perhaps a schedule, or perhaps you were super, super well prepared to interpret a presentation and suddenly the speaker decides that they're changing the topic entirely. So what challenges are you going to need to overcome, right? And in the equestrian sport, I think perhaps one of the things that most attracts me to the equestrian sport is the challenge. Um, Not only do you need to be in tune with yourself and respect yourself, perhaps you have a bad back on one day, or you're tired and you're not at your best, but then you have another living being that has the same challenges, that could have more difficult challenges. And all of this needs to be included in this huge calculation. When we come across challenges, something that I think I lack, it is a weakness that I have, and I think a lot of people share that with me, which is sometimes the ability or lack thereof, making quick decisions, making correct decisions, having discernment. Can we go next? Next slide, please. Okay. And what is discernment? It's really understanding where you are. It's understanding your context. Perhaps yesterday at the first day or on the first day of the event, everything was perfect. The speaker was amazing, very clear, perfect diction. And today he looks like he just dropped from the sky and in a totally foul mood. How are you going to react? What decisions can you make based on that? And the reason that I put these pictures here, even if you are not familiar with horses, as I imagine most of us aren't, or actually most of you aren't, because that's what I live for. On the left, if you take a close look at Valentina's face, she doesn't look like she's happy right now. Although she's in a field, in lush green grass, free, she's irritated. She's miserable. With horses, one of the signs that they're really angry, or that they're not up for dealing with you right now. They have their ears all the way back, and we call that pinned back ears, as in like a safety pin, because they're so tight back that it looks like they're almost fixated there. Her nostrils are wide open and they're wrinkly. And then the next day, she's an angel. She looks like a doll. She has her ears forward. She's calm and happy. So where does your discernment come in? How are you going to deal with that speaker that was perfect yesterday and is hell today? How are you going to deal with a client that offers you a, an unpronounceable rate and wants you to be there 10 hours straight working alone? Where does your discernment come in when you have a difficult decision to make, or even a colloquial decision to make? The next pictures, I made sure to place a series together so nobody would be too scared or too upset. But again, with all of this that we've said, and the steps, the process, the context, the discernment, we're not always bound for success. I think success is a process, and in that process, we're going to fail quite often. And then we can go to the next slide, please. So this is a series of photos. This is Europa and my youngest son. I don't think he would be too happy if he knew that I'm sharing these pictures. But I think that when we get older, the safety personnel and the medical personnel in competitions are so afraid that we're going to kill ourselves that they never take photos of us older people when we fall. So I don't have any recent photos of me crashing, but it happens often. So this was a pretty bad fall. I don't really recall what went wrong. But what happens here is that you have a bad fall and you get up and you keep going, right? You learn from the fall. What happened wrong? Why didn't that client call you back? Why was everybody looking at you like you were speaking maybe Latin or Greek or a mixture of both? What happened? How can you make it better next time, right? Perhaps you were curt with someone and you shouldn't have. Resilience, get up, shake it off, keep going. As I usually say to my niece, Louisa, who is just a sweetheart, but very sensitive. Whenever I said something to her that she wasn't very fond of, she would tear up and I would just say, suck it up, buttercup, which is basically get up, shake it off, keep moving. Okay? And can we have the next one, please? And I think that the love that I have for horses is very similar to the love that I have for life and to the love that I have for everything I do. Am I like in a Pollyanna world? No, not at all. I have really bad days. I have days that are fantastic. I have a bunch that are in between. But I have a lot of love. I love the people that I am with dearly. When I don't, I find something about them to love. Even if it's just their hair, but I find something about them to love. And I think horses have taught me that. You know, there's a saying that says that there are no bad horses, only bad people. And I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, I do agree that there's no bad horses, but I don't agree that they're only bad people. I think everyone has something they're very good at, and I think everyone has something they're very bad at. But something that I think is common to those people in those areas that they are good at something is that they love something. So perhaps you don't love interpreting a biochemistry something or other. Perhaps, you know, spending a month in Colombia like Raquel did is not something that she would love. Or perhaps like going to a cotton plantation in the middle of Barreiras, which we did in August, is not your ideal vacation plan. But find something to love. Find something to love. I mean, I love the pictures we took together. I loved meeting so many people. Raquel was one of them. So love, find something to love. Finally, the next slide. And if at any point you're unsure of what to do, if you're stuck, if you're feeling like you don't belong, if this profession is not for you, that restaurant is not for you, that friend is not for you, renew yourself, reinvent yourself. You know, there are so many things that we can do to reinvent ourselves, and horses have shown me that regularly. Unfortunately, in the past, I think 5 years, I lost 9 horses, which for me is like, that's losing family. It's extremely hard. But I love them and I believe in the renewal. So these little girls here that were just born, on the 2 left pictures, we have Alegria. Alegria is Europa's granddaughter. And I named her Alegria because I had been coming from so many moments of sadness that I said, I need some joy in my life. I need happiness here. I need renewal with happiness. So that's Alegria on the left. And on the right is Anastasia, who is also Europa's baby. So with a lot of dedication, a lot of perseverance, objectives, resilience, and all of that, I am now able to enjoy my 3rd generation, the 3rd generation of my soulmate. And I can't even begin to say how important that is for me, how moving it is for me. And again, I understand that I am the crazy horse lady. That's not news for me. I admit it. I mean, I can sign it under my name and that's fine. But again, if you're stuck, renew yourself, reinvent yourself. Maybe you hate interpreting in a booth. Well, find clients that can take you to interpret outside only. Go to Colombia. You know, I'm not saying Raquel hates boots. I think much on the contrary, she loves them, but go shoot on a boat on a river in Colombia. And I'm not inventing. Raquel can show pictures, actually videos of that. So reinvent yourself. Next one, please. And I think gratitude is a feeling that I get at the end of the day. Again, guys, this is not Pollyanna life. And honestly, I don't even know if this is valid in English. I haven't stopped to think about, you know, Village Pollyanna. I haven't stopped to think about that. But it's not like the perfect life with a little cherry on the top. And, you know, every day you're just happy to get home, happy everything. That's not it. Life is real, ups and downs, beginnings, continuity, difficulties, resilience, but gratitude. I'm grateful for, you know, all of the difficulties, all of the losses, all of the lessons. Oh my God, so many lessons, so many lessons, so many friends, so many experiences really. And I think it's all about, you know, being yourself, being true to your essence, finding your objectives, dedicating, keeping focused, overcoming challenges, having discernment. That's a lesson I need to repeatedly learn. Being within your context, being true to yourself, being resilient, and being grateful. And so, do you remember those boys in the beginning of the presentation? Well, they're these three boys now, and that's Valentina still. So there's always a constant in my life, my north, and I am so happy to have been able to share that with you, and I hope I didn't bore you to pieces. So thank you so much.